Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are watching us from. Welcome to another amazing segment of the High School Hub with your host, Luwi Muwema. We bring to you influential guests, people you want to hear from as promised. For today, we have the author of Hustle Like a West African, Mr. Edwin Ngwane. Mr. Edwin, how do you do?
How do you do?
Great. Are you ready for this, Mr. Edwin?
I'm feeling it. I am so ready to be on this platform, and I'm excited to be on this platform.
We are more than excited to have you on this platform today. All right, so let's dive into it, Mr. Edwin. We're looking at the book, the one and the only trending book, Hustle Like a West African. Okay, we have titled our podcast tonight as The Art of Doing Whatever It Takes to Succeed. Not now, to our guests out there, this is not just based on your academic journey. It's based on your business, finances, and your life as a whole. All right. Let's begin, Mr. Ngwane. First things first, please do give us a brief history, your brief history. Tell us about yourself, what you do, where you're raised.
Okay, so Edwin Ngwane is the firstborn of Mr. Herbert Ngwane and Madam Agnes Piri. I was born in Mufrila, raised 10 years I spent in Mufrila, another 10 years I spent it in Chipata. So I was partly educated in Mufrila and partly educated in Chipata up to secondary school. I come from a very humble background. When I say humble background, I'm talking about the village, the ghetto, and poverty. I know it from beginning to end. But thank God, I managed to complete my high school, despite that I didn't pay much of my school fees. I used to know how to sneak in and sneak out of classes. And when I completed my high school, I had 8 points and I couldn't make it to the University of Zambia because I couldn't get the application form to go to the University of Zambia. So I had to do something else, which was to start selling second-hand clothing at Lusaka City Market. And that allowed me to do evening classes in accountancy. So I registered with Zikas, where I used to do evening classes until I completed my Zika. So that's how the journey began. And I went into, started my employment with Standard Chartered Bank. I worked there for 10 years and I quit last year now to focus on my businesses that I do. So right now I am an entrepreneur, I'm a writer. I think those are the most two important things. There's a digital platform that I've created. It's called kawiwi.com, which we feel is the future of employment.
Wow, that is purely amazing. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Edwin. Now, let's look at your book, Hustle Like a West African. What was your motivation for writing this book?
So the motivation for writing that book is not as amusing for me because we had a child and his name was Israel. We lost that child and I was writing that book for him. So when we had the baby, I asked myself, if my child was to survive in these tough times, in these difficult times we're in, the harsh environment, what would my child do to be able to be successful, even as tough as it is? So I started looking at examples of people that have succeeded, even in these difficult times. I looked at the Chinese, I looked at so many other different types of people that make it despite having a tough time in the beginning. And as I was looking at these things, I looked at the Chinese, I looked at these other people, but I settled with my fellow African brothers from the West. When you look at them, they've been governed by dictators, they've had wars, they've got hunger, they've got corruption, they've got all the bad vices that we talk about in this country. But one thing is certain, it has never stopped them from succeeding. And if you look at it, musically, sports, politics, the World Trade Organization right now is headed by a Nigerian woman. When you look at football, our Patson Daka and Mwepu are managed by Freddie Kanuti from Mali. When you look at the richest footballers, the richest musicians, you look at all these dynamics, you find that the West African brothers have actually done so well, despite having the same problems as we have. And I looked at them and I said, I think there's something that we can learn from them. And I started studying them. And when I was studying them, I had to put it in a book. And that is how I came to write Hustle Like a West African.
That is one inspirational and quite motivating story you have, Mr. Edwin. I'm getting some motivation right now. Now, my next question for you, sir, is did you learn anything from creating or writing this book? You know, after it has been published, did you learn anything that you would love to share with us?
As in publishing?
That is the whole experience. After publishing, people are getting to read and buy your book. What did you learn from all this?
One of the things that I learned is taking advantage, and I've put it in the book, taking advantage of calamities to your advantage. When I was writing that book, I was at my lowest in my life, because I have never experienced losing a child in my life, never. That was the first time, but you'll be surprised I wrote that book in that same period when we were actually mourning. And that was when I was writing. So I learned something, which is you can overcome all kinds of adversity, and you can use adversity to your advantage. And you can, because sometimes what the mistakes we make as people is we spend so much time in the process of grieving. Sometimes we spend so much time in the process of trying to identify where it went wrong and what could have happened, asking so many difficult questions. But I said to myself, nothing of all those questions will give me back my child. But I can write a story that is going to inspire others, that even in those difficult times, you still can use it to inspire others and live a better life.
You know, I love how you say from adversity, okay, you can actually grow something, you can actually learn something, and how the entire book came up out of adversity, out of, you know, such a tough situation. That is, wow, I should say, that is wow. Now, let's look at something that is very common to us as students, all right, that is the educational system, Mr. Edwin. When you look at the educational system in Zambia, what do you think we are raising? Okay, what do you think our educational system is raising in students? Is it something that is beneficial to society?
So the educational system, I'm a critic, actually. I'm not a critic of education. I'm a critic of the educational system. And here is my view. And here's my view. If the educational system only supports brilliant children, then it's useless. That's my measure of quality education, because what I feel is that education, we are all differently gifted. Some people are academically gifted, so they are so intelligent, they will get A's in class, they'll just get the distinction in class. And according to our educational system in Zambia, those are the kids that are intelligent. The rest of the kids are failures. They will be nobodies. The community will look at them as failures. They've actually not, they're not smart enough to contribute positively to the community. But if that educational system was to focus more on the gifts, the talents, the skills, I will tell you that each and every human being is gifted, can be skilled And that person, if we can manage, if the educational system was to be focused on identifying our talents, our gifts, and skilling us, giving us enough skills to survive, to make money, to contribute to our community, I feel our educational system will be where we want us to be. But this educational system of just saying straight A's, that's how we measure you to be a productive citizen, to be an intelligent person, I think that is just so awkward and it doesn't make sense.
That truly does not make sense. Yeah, I love how you put it, the skills. Why not develop that sector? What if I was born to sing? What does education have to offer me? Now, I am going to hold that phrase because I really want us to look into that. Now, I have a question in regard to the common phrase or the common adage that goes, education is the key to success. What do you think about this? What do you have to say about this phrase?
Absolutely. Education, you see, a community that is not educated is not going to know how to read or write. They are not going to learn new things. They are not going to innovate. They are not going to come up with new ways of doing things. Education is key. It's just the type of education we are giving our people, which is not giving them. That's why we have so many students that are unemployed, and all they are looking for is a job. The reason why they're looking for a job is they're not skilled, they've not identified their talents, they've not identified their gift. And that's the reason why they are waiting. Imagine if we could skill them so that they become writers, they become singers, they become whoever God has destined them to be. If we can identify that, our educational system will promote that adage of saying it's the key for success. And it is. But we just need to remodel our education so that it becomes so useful for everyone, not just for the academically intelligent people.
Wow, brilliant. Okay, what if we get to define education from our perspective? What do you think, or how do you think we should define education? You know, after looking at all the other segments outside just sitting in class and learning ABC, then getting that A+. How do you think we should rather define education?
Actually, for me, I look at education to be kind of broad. Number one, it starts at home. I feel that if you're going to leave your child with a maid, that child will learn from the maid. That's number one, as they are growing up. If you are going to be there, they will learn from you. There is some research that says even a baby that is in the womb learns. So as a child is growing up, they can learn from their mother, the father, the community. So it comes in the community. So one of the things I consider is that where I raise up my kid really matters also. Then I go to the school they go to. Where I take my child to learn also matters. Then we go further. We say the environment after school, the friends, the brothers, the sisters, the relatives, all these play a very vital role in our education. That's why you find some people might have degrees, but they think like they never went to school. Why? Because they're surrounded by people who don't think any better, who are not as innovative as they should be. So when I look at education, it's so broad. It starts at home, goes in our communities, at the churches, because when we are talking about morals, it's education. That morality of our people, it is taught at the church. So the church also educates us on certain things. So I find that education is so broad, and to come up with a perfect human being who's going to contribute effectively to the community, everyone has to play a role. It starts with parents, teachers, the churches, and the country at large.
So that's where the phrase charity begins at home comes to play, yeah?
Yeah, yes.
Great. Now, I love how you looked at the phrase education is the key to success. So what we're still saying to the public out there is education is still important. We're not saying stop going to school. No, we are saying education is important and it is broad. in so many ways. Okay. Now, Mr. Edwin, when you look at our academic setup, our educational setup, tell me this: to what extent do you think our education system is impactful?
So you see, number one, I believe that the basic education for every human being is the ability to be able to read and write. And I feel that any human being who's able to read and write is going to identify or learn or know so many other things that they can learn. Because right now we are living in the digital age. You can go on YouTube and watch something and learn. You can go on Facebook, read an article and learn. You can get a book and learn. So any human being who's able to read and write is going to succeed in some way. Education is going to help them to succeed. So I feel that at the basic level, where we are able to teach people how to read and write, that to me is impactful, because the moment somebody learns how to read and write, they will learn the other things by themselves, because the world has just become so good. Just one phone can teach somebody a lot of things.
Just one phone can teach somebody a lot of things. You know, in our past podcasts, we have been telling our students out there, our people out there, that the phone is more than just social media. The phone is more than just, you know, the selfie. The phone is more than just a model. Okay, it has so much more to it, and you have highlighted something so important this day. Now, we have said quite a lot. It feels like we have just had a second together, but let's look at your book, Mr. Edwin. Chapter 6 of Hustle Like a West African. Pointer 6, okay, is titled Improve the Education Sector, okay? So I came across something, and I will quote from the book that says, what if a child is not good at the whole schooling setup? What if your child prefers to spend his time doing music or playing soccer? What does your education system offer such kids? Nothing. Zero. So, Mr. Ngwane, if you were in a place to adopt a new educational system, how would you want it to be restructured?
For me, education, I love the fact that you had to quote that one, because to me, any education that does not support identifying of gifts and identifying of talents and giving survival skills to children is a useless education. Any education that doesn't do that, because you see, this is the reason why we're having so many people that are saying, give us jobs, give us jobs, give us jobs. The reason why they're saying, give us jobs, is because they are waiting until they get a job. They are irrelevant. You get it? But imagine if the educational system had helped them to identify their talent, sharpen their gifts, or sharpen their skills, they would have found a way of using those talents, those gifts, and those skills to earn money without actually getting a job. So I feel we need to go back. I remember at school we had woodwork, we had metalwork, we had all these other classes that have died in our school system. It's all about theory now. But I think if we can go back, teach our children, and actually the basic measurement for me is that even if a child drops out at grade 9, I want them to be an effective child. Even if somebody drops out, they have to be effective. They have to contribute effectively in the community, because imagine somebody dropped out at grade 9 and they learned bricklaying from grade 8 to 9. Do you think this person will be crying out for a job? I don't think so, because they will go into bricklaying.
That is, wow. I feel so many people, so many students especially need, not just have to, but need to hear what you have to say concerning, you know, their school, their lives. Because they are building, yeah, they are growing into something, and it takes all these nitty-gritties, okay, to grow into
Yeah.
something or somebody successful. All right, Mr. Ngwane, before we end this podcast, I'd love to ask, is there anything you would love to tell people who are listening to you today?
Okay, so because the forum is for students, right?
Yes, it
Is
is.
it? Okay, this is what I have for students. One thing that I should mention to students is that if they are going to be thinking about the job when they graduate, to me, it just tells me they didn't learn anything. That's number one. If they are going to just narrow their education into a job, like they narrow their education into a job that I went to school, now it's time to get a job, I think that is actually a wasted education. I feel once they're in school, they shouldn't start for grades. Like just you study the whole night just to make sure that you clear. That's a wrong way of studying. They should get something. If you're doing HR, did you know that you can become an HR consultant? Now, if you become an HR consultant who studied real good, you can help people on how they can interview, how they can write their how they can write their CVs, how they can write their cover letters, and people pay you for that. If you are doing business management, you can become a business consultant even without a job. But that has to be if you studied and you understood and you can share that knowledge with somebody who appreciates it. But if you're doing the theory, you are just clearing exams, it's going to be difficult for you. So number one, please identify certain skills whilst you are in school that you can sell out there without getting a job. That's number one. Number two, think outside the box. Really think outside the box. This job thing, the problems are going to increase. Why? Because technology is here. It's going to phase out so many jobs as we go in the next years. So we need to start thinking outside the box. What else can I do? We need to be versatile and we need to learn more things. That's a new world that we are living in. It demands that you could have studied law, but you need to learn other things like marketing, selling, and all other kind of things. Lastly, we need to become money conscious. At the end of the day, most people don't take money seriously and they end up being broke. It took me 10 years to realize that money is very important and that it was at a time when I was so broke, but I was employed. Many people get jobs, get loans, and then they end up broke and highly indebted. I think when you understand this, when you have listened to this kind of podcast, you should do better. When you get a job, don't rush into spending your money on weddings, spending your money on things that don't matter, cars and stuff like that, and then end up with 5 kids and you can't even take them to school and highly indebted. I think that's a waste way of living your life. As a student, make sure you go into your job and know that one day you leave that job and you need to have some savings and some investments.
I could not say that any better. Thank you so much for that. So you have had it for yourselves. Think outside the box. Mr. Edwin Ngwane, it was such an honor to have you on this podcast today. We are hoping that the people who listen to this, you out there, me here, learn a thing or two. In fact, I have done the learning, still learning. Mr. Edwin Ngwane, this is where I get to say goodbye for now. And again, thank you so much. We truly appreciate. To our guests, until next time, goodbye.
Thank you very much.